Kia ora, what's your name and what do you do?
So I'm Anna Wilson-Goldman, and I'm an organisational development senior advisor, so I'm in a government department, and I work in HR, which is everything from diversity, equity and inclusion through to sort of capability work, yeah.
Okay. So where did you first come across endometriosis? Was it through your work?
It was really, really interesting. I had all sorts of stomach problems when I was in my early 20s and saw my GP about it, and I can distinctly remember someone who I was working with saying to me, I reckon you've got endometriosis. So that was when I was 21. I was diagnosed last year at the age of 39.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's quite a long journey in that case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Half your life nearly.
Yeah, really interesting. So I've always, when I was younger, I had quite painful periods. But it wasn't until I got a cyst on my ovary and it was twisted that I was in a lot of pain. Yeah. So ended up going to ED 4 times. Every time they'd check me out to see if I had a infection or if I had, my gallbladder. Every time, no, you can go home. But obviously something was quite serious going on. Talked to my GP, actually another GP that wasn't my usual GP, and he said, I mentioned that I was bloating quite a lot with my periods, and he's like, do you have private health? Do you have private health insurance? And I said, no, but we've got money set aside. He said, I think it might be endometriosis. I had kind of suspected that I had endometriosis, and I don't know how I learned about endometriosis. I think there was, lots on the internet, and I know 3 women who have had surgeries. So went down the path of ended up having private surgery in March last year. The surgeon pretty much said that I kind of wish I'd had an ultrasound, to be honest, because it could have come up and shown that I had a cyst. And then I may have gone down the public health system, but actually don't regret getting private surgery because it was quicker. He was an excellent surgeon. I mean, I'm sure there's really excellent surgeons in the public health system, but with COVID, lots of surgeries were being delayed, and we all know that our public health system is sometimes under a lot of pressure. So had surgery. Turned out that I was in so much pain because my wee ovary was twisted. Yep. And found a fair bit of, not like ridiculous amounts of lesions, but enough that it would have been causing my period pain most of my life. Yeah.
What was it like getting the diagnosis?
To be honest, it was really scary, but heading up to the surgery to think that I was like gaslighting myself, I was really happy and a little bit angry that no one had realised that I had the cyst. To be honest, when I was really young, I had quite severe period pain, but had mostly managed my IBS kind of bowel symptoms most of my life. Ate really well, exercised, had lots of water. So I'm not really mad about the not diagnosing endometriosis because I was managing it right, but the not diagnosing the cyst, it was equal parts I feel validated. But a little bit initially pissed off, to be honest. Yeah.
To get the diagnosis after so long, after nearly sort of 20 years of that first time that someone mentioned it to you, can you give us a bit of a sense of what it has been like for you living with it all of that time? And in that year since you've had the diagnosis, I guess what has changed? What have you been able to see in a different way?
Yeah, so it's really interesting how much pain I was in and didn't realise, right? So it's like every second month or so with a cyst, I would be off work for 2 or 3 days, sometimes more, in extreme pain, and the rest of the time kind of taking medication to manage my inflammation. And before the cyst, if I had a bad period, I just kind of thought that that's what most women, had going on. And so it's really interesting. Like, I think I've looked after my health more because of having the endometriosis. So I still eat a really good diet and drink lots of water, and make sure I get lots of sleep. So I'm kind of weirdly grateful for that. But yeah, when I speak to other women and what they've been through, everything, like older women I know who've had full hysterectomies from endometriosis, and other women I know who've had surgeries and the endos come back, or women with adenomyosis, which sounds really, really painful. I feel like, I'm glad to have the diagnosis. Mm-hmm. It is helpful because I can talk about it, and a lot of the time people have heard of endo. Sometimes they haven't, but it is validating. I've been since I've been diagnosed, felt more open discussing it with my work, with my managers at work. Like I have really bad period pains, or I have this weird pain that comes once a month, and I think it's associated with my period, but I don't even really know. Isn't a way. It's harder to discuss with an employer. Having a diagnosis helps, and it really sucks that for a lot of women, in order to get a diagnosis, they have to have surgery. Like, that's a very annoying thing about this this condition.
It's kind of interesting perspective, I suppose, that you have because of the work that you do in HR, because I guess maybe if we start with you and then talk a little bit about what it's like being involved with managing other people. From your perspective, were you able to have flexible work, or was it the kind of job or the kind of work that you were doing where you were able to put some sort of mitigation strategy in when you did get the pain, or if you were having a really bad bleed and that kind of thing?
It was really interesting because I had only really started a fixed term role that I'm no longer in. I'm now in a permanent role. When I first turned up in ED with the cyst pain, and it was around November, and I'd started in October, so I was pretty new, but I was really lucky because my manager then, his wife had endo and he knew that it was a really painful condition. So when I turned up in ED, it was, hey, like I was really sick, right? Like you don't go to hospital if you're not really sick. So they took that and, believe me, it's just like, okay, well, just take the time off that you need because it's almost the end of the year anyway. So that was really nice. And then when my GP mentioned that he thought that I might have endo and that, if I wanted to start the process of going to see a surgeon, I mentioned that to my manager. So I actually took a lot of time off, just unpaid leave in that role, which, I'm really lucky that I've got a partner and we've got savings, but that wouldn't have been easy if I was younger or if I didn't have, a fallback. And so I guess now I do prefer permanent roles because you tend to get sick leave sooner. They don't have to give you sick leave in your first year, but they tend to. And you can get your holiday leave in advance. For your first 6 months, they don't have to give you sick leave. So as in my first six months, I had no sick leave.
Yeah.
That role. That organisation has actually now gone back and looked at their conditions for fixed term employees, and they are giving sick leave to people who are on fixed terms straight away. So that is really good. It's really interesting. Knowing kind of the rules and then still just going, okay, well that's what I have to work with. But I am really appreciative of even just support from a manager and just being open. I think working in where I work, in the field I work, probably means that I'm more likely to say just up front, this is what's going on with me. Because I know that if you aren't honest or upfront, then it helps to be courageous and just say, like, this is what's going on with me when you're talking with your manager. Yeah.
Kind of an interesting perspective, I guess, when you think about that sort of relationship, the employer-employee relationship, and you, in a funny kind of way, you have a foot in both camps on this, I guess. With sick leave, is provision good enough for sick leave when it comes to endo in New Zealand? Do people end up taking an awful lot of unpaid time, and what is that doing to the situation for women's earnings, women's careers, that kind of thing?
I think endo is similar to a lot of other illnesses. A lot of people are taking more sick leave, especially you can see over the last 3 years. If you weren't granted extra COVID leave, then you got the flu when the borders opened, and then you've got another condition on top of that. It doesn't take very long to meet your sick leave allowances. I mean, a lot of organisations are more flexible and have been more flexible over this time, which is good. I mean, it's certainly easy to if you've got 10 days or 15 days to get your sick leave allowance and reach that, right? Like, it doesn't take that many colds or flus even. And I swear, like, I've always been more susceptible to colds or flus. I have no idea if that's an endo thing or what, but like, even without pain, I can very easily get my sick leave allowance. I think it's helpful when you can work from home, and if you've got the type of career that you can work from home, that's really, really helpful, and I certainly appreciate that. When I was in a lot of pain, I would kind of log in and do the things that I really, really needed to do and say, look, I'm going to log off in a couple of hours once I've got this sorted. Or, look, I've had to take yeah, I've had to take some pretty full-on drugs. Can't think very well when I'm on these pain medication. I have to log off now. Everything from that. I'm not someone who will always put my work ahead of my health. Like, I look after myself, and I've had to kind of really learn that, and once again have the support of my family and support of my partner to do that.
Yeah. I guess that's another thing, isn't it, that some of the medication that people are prescribed for endometriosis, they're often yes, anti-inflammatories, but also opioids. And I guess in your job, you're not having to operate heavy machinery or necessarily do a lot of driving or that sort of work. But that kind of thing, the impact would be pretty considerable.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't work in the aspects of HR that I'm always giving advice, but I am sometimes giving advice on policy or writing policy or writing strategy or attending meetings where I give advice, right? So I'm not necessarily giving employment advice in my current role, it's more organisational advice. But I mean, I'm not allowed to work if I have any alcohol. Like, that's my current terms and conditions. So if someone is affected strongly by their opioid pain medication, which, yeah, sometimes I was and sometimes I wasn't, to be honest. I know people with other disabilities who can take pretty full-on medication and they've just built up a tolerance and they can still work, but that wasn't me.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. What kinds of policies, I guess, were in place, or what kind of knowledge base was there also in your workplace, so that when you were having those kind of courageous conversations with your manager about endometriosis and your new diagnosis, what kind of stuff was in place there to help?
Yeah, so really only sick leave and then leave without pay. In my current workplace, we're working on a reasonable accommodation policy for disabled employees, which is best practice. Isn't like, you do need to make reasonable accommodations for employees with disabilities, and endometriosis does come into that. But I don't think a lot of people with endo would know that your employer has to legally make accommodations, which could include reduced hours, or could include a standing desk if you get a really sore lower back, which certainly helps with me, if they can. So if it's reasonable, which is the trickier thing,
because what is reasonable, right?
Because what is reasonable, and then what's reasonable for a large organisation compared with an organisation that has like 2 or 3 employees as well. But I think certainly certainly with the public service and the public sector, as people become more aware of the importance of opening up diversity in the workplace, becoming more aware of employing people with disabilities, those conversations become more common and more encouraged. And yeah, hopefully in the future more people will feel comfortable to say when they apply for a role, or probably best practice, like when they're being onboarded for a role, is there any way we can support you? And organisations can ask that, and someone can say, look, yeah, actually, I've got this condition, I manage it really well, it could get worse in the future, this is how I look after myself, and this is what works for me.
Is it the kind of thing that, it's like, at what point do you tell an employer that you have something like this? It's a chronic pain condition, which, as you say, it could get it could stay like this and plateau for a while, or it could get drastically worse. It's kind of tricky, isn't it? If you're, if you move jobs, if you're in the early stages with a new employer, like at what point do you tell them?
It's really tricky, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with anyone who's working with an invisible disability. At what stage do you tell them? Like, definitely for me, I'm not impacted as much as I was. So I'd prefer to tell my employer now, look, I've got this, it could come back, like I've had surgery, I've managed it, I look after myself, I know what to do if it does come back, but I'd prefer to have that conversation up front. But if you're right in the middle of it, working, as I've got friends who are, who have flare-ups a few times a year, changing roles is really tricky for them. I know someone who really put off moving into a different role for years because she wasn't sure if it would take a while to build up that foundation of, okay, yep, I can work from home on this day, or I'm just going to take leave, but then maybe if I could do something on the weekend to make up my hours. Like, she had a pretty cool situation that worked for her. Yeah.
Do you think businesses and employers are getting smarter? Maybe the pandemic is one of the reasons why perhaps we're getting better at this kind of thing, with the kind of flexible work and that sort of thing. But are employers getting smarter and more kind of clued up about issues like endometriosis so that they're able to better support workforce?
I think at the moment, and the cynic in me would say it's because the employment market is really hard pickings, and you have to open the field and look wider. I'd like to say that organisations are getting better at it, and I think over time they are. But yeah, it's really tricky, and there's lots of shades of grey of, when do you disclose that you have a chronic condition? Hopefully, if we have better policies in place and, better communications about, what employers have in place, and better provisions to make organisations like better in the market, right? Like if you've got same as if you have some sort of incentive for women returning to work after they have children, if you have menstruation leave, which I understand is a thing. I haven't actually ever seen it at an organisation, but I understand it can be a thing. If you have extended sick leave, it can be, a benefit in the market, but it can also provide a lot of support to individuals. Yeah.
What do you see, or what are your thoughts about kind of your future with Endo and how you might navigate the next few years?
Yeah, so I really hope it doesn't grow back now that I've had surgery, and I understand it could, but it might not. And I still experience fatigue, and I still have to, keep looking after myself. It's going to be really interesting dealing with the double blows of perimenopause and endometriosis. So that's going to be really interesting. And I don't know, and I try not to be afraid because it can be pretty scary, but I hope that my health will be manageable, and having conversations up front with employers in case things happen. My current manager, I don't know if she'll want me to talk about this or not, but she has a health condition herself. So we talk about what's going on with us, or what has gone on with surgeries and whatnot, you know, a fair bit. So, and she's really open, so that's awesome as well. Like, I feel really fortunate about that. I know what I would do if it does come back, but then there is a choice for me as well if I try to go through the public health system and navigate that, which is more affordable but could take longer, or go private. I haven't decided to get private health insurance because of the stand-down period, and still have money set aside. I don't know. might regret that choice as well. It's another choice. But private health insurance is very expensive as well. So I might not ever need it.
Yeah, it's quite hard to try to quantify, isn't it? Because some people have a surgery and they don't ever need anything else. And I guess some of that depends on stage of life or how well you respond to some of the other, you know, things like Mirena and that kind of thing, which can help. But the uncertainty can be quite tricky. It can be quite destabilising, I suppose. Yeah, I have practiced mindfulness for many years, and trying to just accept things as they are is a constant journey, but I think really, really helpful for chronic pain, but also for navigating anxiety about the future. Just kind of being in the present moment and wherever possible, breathing. I don't know. That's the other thing as well. Yeah, so I have a Mirena, and really finding it helpful reducing my periods. Great.
Yes, and hopefully getting down to no periods for a few years, because I had one a few years ago before I was diagnosed with endo, and because I didn't really want to have period pain. And then I got a copper one, and that was terrible. That could have been a sign that I had endo when I got like such horrible periods with a copper iodine. But yeah, I hope that the Mirena keeps on working for me. And I guess, if the pain comes back, now I know I've had an endometrial cyst, I know that could be what the pain is. So that's really helpful to know as well, right? Because, if you've got really sore lower back or really sore abdomen, an internal ultrasound isn't always going to be the first thing that your medical professional thinks of, I've discovered, so, that might be in my case. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for telling us your story.
You're welcome.